And they've got a free roll with 5K up top as well for the showdown on tomorrow night, which is pretty nice too. Like you said, for casuals.
For sure. They're really showing off for casuals tomorrow. Which is good.
Yeah. Let's rock, baby. Yeah, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NFL strategy show. Happy to be with you as always, talking NFL Thanksgiving Day football presented by Prize Picks. I'm Dave Lochran at Laffy_D, joined by Matt Gajeski at Matt_Gajeski. 3 games, not exactly the most stellar slate of contests, but with some of the injuries we have on tap, some of the questionables, some of the ownership that we've got. We ran our ownership, we ran our top stacks, all of that first run is in. Matt, it's still going to be a fun one to break down. And I know you love these slop fests as much as I do.
100%, man. Couldn't have said it better myself. 3-game slate, Thanksgiving. There's just all this excitement for it. So many casuals playing, just so many people off of work, enjoying football throughout the day. And it's a unique slate, not just because there's only 3 games, which kind of makes an interesting ownership puzzle, but there are 3 island games. So you have late swap potential, a lot of equity that could be gained just by making adjustments throughout the day. And not to mention, we have 3 separate showdown slates too. A lot of really fun football ahead of us.
3 separate big showdown slates. One's 50K up top, another's, I think, 200K, another's bigger than that. I mean, there's some huge contests. There's no doubt about it. It's not my birthday, but they will say that every single show. No, my birthday is March 26th. So mark that in your calendars. Richard says, Laffy, had a dream last night you were commentating the X Games. Maybe I fell asleep to YouTube playing. That's awesome. I went to the X Games twice, Matt, when they were in Philadelphia, and it was awesome. I was a kid. I was like 15 years old. I won the fan skateboard competition there as well in 1 year. So got that under my belt. I was at the time. Yeah. I won best trick and highest ollie, both in the same day. Pretty sweet.
When did you say your birthday was?
March 26th.
All right. Don't ask me why I know this, but you share a birthday with the one and only Chad Kelly.
You knew that? Why did you know that?
I love Chad Kelly.
That's awesome.
I just have a locker of random information in my head, but
Chad Kelly,
the former Ole Miss quarterback that flamed out of the NFL, got in trouble.
Yeah. Oh, I know Chad Kelly. That's phenomenal. Anyway, we're happy to have you guys with us. If you haven't done so yet, hit that thumbs up. Thanksgiving is rapidly approaching. It'll be here tomorrow. We'll be back with you for a 3.5-hour live stream going up to kickoff. So not going anywhere, the grind of the DFS content world, but hammer that thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so yet. 66,500 subscribers now. Thanks to all of you lovely souls out there. We're almost at 70K, and it'll be a great day when we achieve that goal. Moving up, doing big things in this world. And if you want to, hit that join down below the thumbs up. You can get, of course, the custom emojis. You can get mine and Alex, and we got to get one for you, Matt. We got to get like a 4.
I don't want one, man. It's going to be bad.
Why? We got to get a 4 low, like chugging a 4 low. Oh, that'd be so great.
I made a promise. Well, I'm going to have to do one on one of these streams. I don't know when, but
we have.
Josh was clamoring for likes and he volunteered me to do one, but I don't know when.
Well, I mean, I think for our Christmas stream. What a mess that was a beautiful disaster last year.
Yeah. The thing was, last year I was by myself. So I didn't have anybody to entertain on Christmas Eve. I think it was, I was just here at my apartment by myself. I don't know if I'll be with family this year, being a drunk mess.
Yeah. Okay. We'll figure something out. We will figure something out. I think it was like the 23rd. Are you going to be away on the 23rd?
I'm not going to be away for any of it. I'll just be around family. And I don't know if I want to be a drunk mess in front of them.
At least not that early.
That's true.
I mean, Jordan was on the West Coast, I think, and he was killing a bottle of Kettle One by 7 a.m.
That was unbelievable. That was the most unbelievable part of the stream.
I think he said he slept 24 straight hours after that.
You're body needs to after that.
Oh, he was toast. But yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys will join us for that. I know some of you enjoy those live streams when we just get out of control. You can have some drinks with us, but we got some football to talk about, Matt. And like I said, custom emojis, the badges, as you can see with Jacob and everybody else in here. Awesome. Yo, myself, huge beats, and a bunch of others that'll pop in with the badges. You get a free super chat every month. You get the priority access and questions, and we'll always shout you out because we love the team Awesemo around this way. Anyway, Matt, I looked at ownership. I looked at top stacks, and I will say it's very difficult right now to get like to get your finger on the pulse of ownership. But here's my thinking right now. And you tell me if you agree or disagree, and we can go from there. I don't think Alvin Kamara plays. I think Zeke plays. I don't think Allen Robinson plays.
I'm in 100% agreement with you. Zeke already practiced in full. Like he's playing, and we know Zeke does not miss games for injuries unless they are very severe. Kamara hasn't. He tried to practice one time last week. It did not go well. And he's been a DMP since then. So he's a hard one to kind of gauge. The fact that he tried to return and couldn't right away suggests that he's trying to get back out there, but I still think the short week makes him a little bit questionable. And Allen Robinson with the hamstring, like he's still DMP throughout the week. Those things just don't get better overnight. So until Allen Robinson even turns into limited practice, I'm just going to assume he misses games. The real interesting one for me is Mark Ingram. Ingram, yeah, DMP yesterday. He's very questionable to play at this point, and he's not expensive, but then even cheaper than him, the presumed lead back without Ingram would be Tony Jones, coming off injured reserve, a guy that actually spelled Kamara a little bit to begin the year. He's the stone minimum. And we already are dealing with a situation where we basically don't have a lot of salary constraints on the slate. And Tony Jones Jr. being the lead back would exacerbate that problem even more.
That's the thing, right? Because Tony Jones would be locked in everywhere, especially after what people saw Jonathan Taylor do last week. Granted, not the same running back at all, not the same team, but he's also minimum salary on a 3-game slate. Man, that's going to explode ownership. And then if CeeDee Lamb ends up being out, he is yet to get a practice in. These concussions are weird, Matt, because you can just come out, you can just get out of the protocol and then be okay. But there's a lot. So we have to hopefully
you can get limited practices when you're in protocol. So if he's DMP, it suggests to me he's not at the stage he needs to be to get that clearance, like the snap of your fingers.
Sure. They said he was like running light sprints or something.
Yeah. And those are just stages.
Right. So he did a light run through session Tuesday. That doesn't really mean much at all. Are you projecting Lamb out then?
Yeah, almost with certainty. Recovering from a concussion in 5 days, like it's almost unheard of for guys to do it in 7 days at this point. It would be a shock to me.
I think you're right. Danny P says Jordan was the star of the show last year. No question. No doubt.
It was amazing.
Which is hilarious because he's so afraid to be on camera when he's producing shows. It's like I've tried to get the producer cam forever now, and he's like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. But then there he is, 2 days before Christmas, just rocking out.
If it wouldn't mess up our settings, I would show you guys the look Jordan Klein normally gives on our Zoom calls. But basically, if I were to lower my head about 6 inches so you can only see from the nose up, that's how Jordan sits on camera. Yeah. You can only see his eyes.
Yep. And when you say, like, if I say something irreverent or just something that he's like, wow, I can't believe you just said that, you just see, hold on, let me get down. It's not going to work. I was trying to go.
I know. I thought I could do it too. I don't think I can without messing up the settings for Mike on the back end.
You just see the eyes go up like this, and you know that he's like, oh, Laffy shouldn't have said that. But yeah. Anyway, let's talk a little more football here.
Let's do it.
The injuries are crazy. You got to tune in for the live stream tomorrow, but I already started building lineups and I've come up with some stuff that I feel pretty good about. I just don't know how long it's going to last. Like Jones ownership will come through the roof. Mooney's ownership will skyrocket. If it doesn't, it should. I'm telling you right now, if Robinson is out, Gallup's going to come up even higher. Cedric Wilson, all of those guys are just going to get a ton of love. Montgomery right now, 40.9% projected ownership, Matt, against this Detroit defense. I totally get it. I mean, teams are running the ball like crazy against them. I went over to Odd Shopper and looked at his prop. I already hit the over on the rushing prop. We've got him he's at 75.5 yards on FanDuel, right? Over's just slightly juiced. We have him projected for 94.4 rushing yards. And and I get it, right? Because that's a lot. Maybe it comes down a little bit, but he's still going to clearly be over that 75.5. He played 92% of snaps last week. 95% of snaps. He played 56 of 59 possible snaps. And Khalil Herbert has become an afterthought entirely at this point. I don't even think if Damian Williams returns with that calf and the injury that he's going to get any work, because he was way behind Khalil Herbert before Montgomery came back. So I get this ownership. I understand he's up there, but I think at his price point and the expected workload and no rushing vulturing from Justin Fields with Dalton starting, that David Montgomery does deserve to be a popular back this week. And I'm hitting that over. We have it at a huge 70+% expected win rate on Odd Shopper.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't even really touch on the matchup that much. They're playing Detroit.
I know.
They should be able to run all over Detroit. I mean, 15 of 16 total RB touches last week, all but one touch David Montgomery handled. And that game didn't exactly go according to plan. Otherwise, you probably would have seen Montgomery with an even larger workload. We're in lockstep for all the reasons you mentioned. And then you just add in that they're playing Detroit. You can't really draw it up much better. And I would expect this to move. So if you are looking to take this prop, I wouldn't wait till tomorrow morning. I would try to hit it as soon as possible.
How many times have we seen that recently? Dude, go ahead.
Last Wednesday, you brought up the AJ Dillon prop and it was at like 62 yards. I was on the Sunday live stream and I was like, oh, I wonder what this moved to. It was up 20 yards.
That's crazy.
20 yards.
That's why you got it. That's why with Odd Shopper, get in there right as these props drop. Like you were saying, it's huge. I told you about, or the one the other day, the Kadarius Toney. Here's a perfect example. Kadarius Toney's prop moved up to 42.5, even higher. In some spots, it got up to like 45.5. But early in the day, we had it as the highest expected win rate, highest expected ROI. And at Odd Shopper, we give you where the best bet is. So Bet Rivers had it at 38.5 in the morning, Matt, before it got steamed and went up like 6 yards. If you hit it at 38.5, that's the only place you're winning it. That's the only place you would have won it because he had 40. And everywhere else, it either was above that or came up throughout the day. So you got to get in on these early. You're absolutely right.
It's a huge difference maker. And your bottom line at the end of the year, it might not seem like a big deal. What is 3 yards? But it does matter when you're taking a lot of these props. And if you're betting multiple players on Thanksgiving, I would suggest taking them as early as you can, especially when they're clearly mispriced like Montgomery, because it does matter at the end of the day.
Hey, what do you think of Zeke Elliott against the Vegas team that just looks like they're in full implosion mode right now and really can't stop anybody on the ground?
It's another situation, just like you mentioned with Montgomery, where I think he's clearly underpriced. And I think a lot of the underpricing for Zeke this week comes because of the injury. So he's based on our Odd Shopper tool, you can find 60.5 rushing yards available at DraftKings. I think that is mispriced because of the injury, but seeing him check a full practice on Tuesday, that it reduces the concerns for me with the workload. The matchup is solid against Las Vegas. I think the strength of that team is up front, but they've gotten significantly weaker since they lost their coach. They've lost some players from injuries. They've had to cut a few others. And then GameScript projects to be in Ezekiel Elliott's favor. We already know that this dude, he just doesn't miss games because of injuries unless they're absolutely of the severe variety. So Elliott, I expect him to handle a full workload. There's 7-point favorites over Vegas. This game has the highest total on the board tomorrow. 60.5 rushing yards seems a little bit low to me. And then cross-reference with our projections, we currently have him at 73.5. So that's nice little verification there.
Do you think Tony Pollard deserves any attention if we're talking about like a lower owned option at running back, getting around 16% on DraftKings right now? Or is that a little bit out of your price range where he's coming in at?
I mean, 3-game slate, we got to consider these guys, especially because we know Montgomery is going to be more owned. Elliott's going to be more owned. Swift, And then whatever New Orleans back starts is going to be more. So at best, he's going to be the 5th highest owned. And then I even think he probably comes in a little lower than like Jacobs and some of these like 2nd-tier backs. But there's the situation where maybe Zeke is a little more banged up than we think. Again, I do not see that being the case because he's logging full practices. But then at the same time, if Zeke is banged up in any degree and the Cowboys just rout the Raiders, like maybe they pull Zeke from the game. Just why would they need to use him if it's a 14-point game? And Pollard is a very efficient backup. So there's a situation where Pollard maybe outscores Zeke and enters an optimal lineup at his price. Again, I don't think it's the most likely, but you're not playing Pollard because he's the most likely player to reach a ceiling. You're playing him because of the leverage he would give you via ownership.
It does kind of feel like a route game, doesn't it?
To me, it does. I haven't bet it, but if I were, it would be on the Dallas side or it would be bust. I wouldn't take it if you offered me just the Raiders.
I wouldn't either. No, they just look terrible right now. 7.5 points. That's not a line I love though. Like if if you could get, you're not going to find 6.5 anywhere. I don't think. I mean, you could, it's -140 though. That's tough. Yeah. But yeah, no, I'm with you, Matt. That to me, I or just like parlay it with another money line favorite at -335. 7.5. I don't love just because that's coming in below the key number and it's a little weird, but I'm with you on Pollard. I think I think that's, and the other thing too is I always talk about guys that have utility if someone goes down or gets hurt, or guys that have utility anyway. And it's not like Pollard is going to get a massive workload. He has clearly seen his role regress recently, but he is someone that's still going to have some utility, Matt. Like he's still going to get a decent amount of snaps. He'll still get a few targets in the passing game. He'll still probably have 5 to 8 carries. And if that's the case, he can break one. He can make some plays. You don't need a blowout. You don't need Zeke to go down in order for Pollard to at least have a couple opportunities to make an explosive play either.
Yeah, 100%. He will get mixed into the game. And like you said, with Zeke not necessarily needing to go down, I think if they just get up to a semi-comfortable lead, you could see more Pollard just naturally because Zeke is banged up. And again, maybe he's healthy enough to play through the injury, but if the game is comfortable and maybe that's even just like 2 touchdowns, Pollard could see an extended workload because of that. There's again, the Raiders are not really a competitive team right now. If Dallas can get to that degree of game script, then they could use Pollard a little bit more.
Do you have anyone in your family that you just don't want to see for Thanksgiving?
My family is really small. So I just have my mom, my dad, and my brother, which is and my dad and my brother are exactly like me. Like I grew up in my household. My dad played football in college, likes to gamble, watch all these games. Like I remember one time I came home and my brother and my dad were betting on the high school, like state football game. I don't know what offshore book they found to line it, but I live in Wisconsin, but it's pretty enjoyable because they just operate like I do.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, it is. Just drinking and gambling.
I love it. Yeah. My family's very small as well. Very small. But we're going to my wife's side of the family, huge Italian family, just like massive. Now we're not doing anything huge, but now that, my brother-in-law, sister-in-law, all of them have a kid or two. And then now it starts to add up a little bit, but I like the more intimate setting. We're not going to have a lot, but I went to a family reunion of hers once, Matt, and it was hundreds of people, hundreds of people.
That's unfathomable to me. My family Thanksgiving has been like 4 people for the longest time. My girlfriend's coming this year. I'll tell you what, she's not going to probably enjoy all the drinking and the gambling, but well, what can you do?
What are you going to drink? Like, what's your go-to drink other than Four Loko? You can't be sitting down at Thanksgiving ripping Four Lokos.
No, I don't drink Four Lokos with my family. Have you ever heard of Mickey's fine malt liquor?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I love those.
It's not fine malt liquor at all.
I think it just says that on the can.
It's like it's generally sold in 40s. Are you drinking?
Yeah,
are you gonna?
Awesome.
You be drinking Oh no, you were drinking those little.
The like grenades.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
I was drinking them on the Christmas stream after the Four Loko.
Mickey's. That's your go. What's your guys' go-to? Like me, Matt. I'm gonna be behind the scenes ripping straight Jack at times tomorrow. There's no doubt about
Love that. Oh, you know what my dad drinks?
What's
I
that?
saw him do this one time. So he likes to drink a lot of table wine. And then one time, I don't know, I'm sitting at the table watching games and I turn over and I see him pour a shot of Fleischmann's whiskey on the top of his table wine, mix
Oh,
it up a
that's
little bit.
awesome.
And he calls them whiskey wines. So now I've been on the whiskey wines too.
That is awesome. Yeah. So Justine just went out and bought some Jack. We're going to bring it over to my brother-in-law's. But then that big thing of wine, that big, like you would think you'd see it in biblical times. You know what I mean? Just a huge glass jug of wine with the small handle up top. That's tough to carry. I know, you know, I forget the name of it, but I know, you know what I'm talking about.
I do. I don't know the name of it either, but I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. Table wine with a shot of whiskey in it. That's phenomenal.
It's not bad. You'd be surprised.
I'd try it for sure. I'll try anything, you know, but yeah, Crown and Coke. That's a big one. I get that, but yeah, Nick said, yeah, that's DC malt liquor. It's like Northeast stuff. Yeah. Down in Trenton, Mickey's, it was big and like, yeah, that absolutely, man. So yeah, you'd fit in fine around here drinking Mickey's.
Yeah. When I show up sometime, like the All-Star break, when I come out East or something, we'll have to have some.
Oh, we're definitely getting together. We're definitely going to get together and have some drinks for sure. Maybe we'll have just an Awesemo meetup and bring some of the viewers out as well. Just tell them, show up. Doesn't matter. We'll hang out.
That'd be awesome.
What else are you doing at running back for like DeAndre Swift, right? And Josh Jacobs, who's pulling some ownership right now. Of course, that'll change once we get some other news. I can't even talk about Kamara right now, but if you want to hit on Ingram in the event that he plays, I think it's at least more likely than Kamara. But if you want to do that, we already know Tony Jones would be chalk, and I think rightfully so, because I don't really know how else is going to be in that backfield. And we saw how much work Ingram got. But what about the players we haven't hit on?
Yeah, so I think the top two most owned guys are going to be David Montgomery and whatever Saints back plays. If it's Ingram, I know he's more expensive. He still projects really well right now on our side. Just looking at the projections, we have Kamara out and Ingram in, and he still projects very well. If you switch that and project just Tony Jones without Ingram, obviously he projects well too because he's the stone min. The interesting spot for me is what you do with Swift and Elliott and Josh Jacobs. And I expect Swift to be fairly owned just because of the pass catching ability. And he's shown an upside for just a monster workload. Last week changed a little bit with Jamal Williams coming back, but it was still largely Swift handling most of the work in that backfield. Elliott has the better matchup, and I think that could just steer some people towards him, especially with all the value we do have on this slate. The interesting stuff to me is like Josh Jacobs, a clear underdog, not a pass catching back. They'll still use other backs in that capacity over him. That could be an interesting GPP play. And this is one way to gain leverage, is just maybe you play Montgomery, Jones, and then you take a stab on Jacobs, or you get a little bit weird with the Buffalo situation. And I think that is the most volatile backfield that we have on this slate, just with Matt Breida playing really well last week and Zach Moss and Devin Singletary repeatedly disappointing. The backfield could go to more towards Breida, and Buffalo does have a large implied team total. The thing is, that one's still just going to be a three-way timeshare to some degree, no matter what. And you just have a clear path to points with some of these others. But I'm not sure running back is going to be my big differentiating point on this slate. I think I'm mainly going to mix Montgomery, Swift, Elliott, Jacobs, and whatever New Orleans back plays, and then get different a little bit else somewhere at a different position.
You know how you know our viewers love to drink, Matt? Because we have more votes on the poll than we have thumbs up, which is impressive, but also wildly insulting.
I did not realize that, but it is true.
It's very true. Beer pulling away. Whiskey, semi-close second. To all my whiskey drinkers out there, shout out. Some of you guys are probably younger, you know, like young, early 20s and maybe late teens. We have a decent amount, like 18 through 24 people watching. Once you get a little older, you'll certainly become more accustomed to whiskey. If you're not an alcoholic and haven't needed to stop drinking yet, you'll be all about it. I probably should stop drinking, but I don't know, Matt, you only live once, right?
That's true.
Do you have any interest in any of these Buffalo backs? Because now you have Matt Breida in the conversation as well, and that just makes things so ugly.
Yeah, it does. I am interested in Matt Breida. I definitely think he's behind the 5 that we already talked about, but it's a 3-game slate. And if you play a guy like Breida, he is your leverage point. you could jam mostly chalk around him unless you're playing something like the Millie Maker that we have or something like that. But just looking at these backs down here, we're currently projecting Breida for 2.7% ownership. And I think this probably climbs a little bit. We still have Zach Moss projected ahead of him. Ultimately, I think these Buffalo backs probably all come in like around the same ownership, maybe like 8%. But still, that's huge leverage on a 3-game slate. It's not the normal 8% from your Saturday main slate. Like I remember last year, I believe we had some players on this slate, like Deshaun Watson, maybe, that were upwards of like 70% owned.
Yes, it was. You're absolutely right. He was.
So we're seeing David Montgomery at 41% as the highest owned player. That's a little low for a 3-game slate. So, I mean, if you get a guy coming in at 8%, that's like extreme leverage. That's like a 1%er on the main slate.
It's a great point. And yeah, actually, because I remember it was you, me, and Kyle talking about it, right? I think
Kyle Dvorak.
Yeah, because Kyle Dvorak, formerly of Awesemo, now of, is it CBS?
He's at NBC.
NBC. Yeah, NBC Edge. Good guy too. We like Kyle. But I remember we had a big discussion on whether or not the fade made sense because it was such a good matchup as well. And there were no other good quarterbacks like David Blau and Mitch Trubisky. And you know what I mean? It was not good at all. And remember, Dak Prescott wasn't out, which meant that it had to have been one of those guys that most people don't even talk about or don't even know exist anymore from Dallas.
Yeah, it was a disaster of a slate. And so kind of to circle back to this slate, if you get like Breida at 8%, he's just super low owned in the context of a 3-game slate. And there is upside.
I get it. Who? Oh, Ben DiNucci.
Ben DiNucci, my guy.
And there was another one too.
Cooper
Rush and
Garrett Gilbert.
Garrett Gilbert. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Ben DiNucci sounds like someone that would be at, my Thanksgiving thing tomorrow. Not on a football field. Not on a football field. Hey, Prize Picks. I don't know if you guys have checked it out yet. I got a good one for today. We're going straight back to the rushing touchdowns. Well, heavily juiced to the over everywhere else, but not on Prize Picks. It's a player prop platform. It's awesome. You build lineups, whether it's 2, 3, 4, or 5 with player props, just taking the over or the under. There's no juice on either side. There's an insane variety, an insane menu of sports, football, basketball, baseball, hockey, PGA, hell, disc golf, cricket. I mean, seriously, there's absolutely anything you could think of on there. You can mix sports together if you have knowledge in more than one, more than one area. Everything about it is a ton of fun, and it just keeps getting more popular for good reason. I think they're doing the player prop stuff right, because if you pick 5 player or a 5 prop lineup, you don't have to hit all 5. It's not like another book where you miss that last leg and you're miserable and you can't sleep and you wake up and you hate your life and your family because of it. No, you 2x if you hit 4 or 5. If you hit 3 of 5, you still make money back, which is really cool. Just check it out if you haven't done so yet. Before you do that, if you're going to sign up, if you're going to deposit, use the promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO. You receive an instant deposit match of up to $100, which is huge. Download it in the App Store, Google Play Store, or I like going on the desktop to prizepicks.com. That's where I look at everything, but they really have everything there. And Matt, I'm going to pick one right now that is absolutely a good spot. David Montgomery over a half a rushing touchdown. So essentially David Montgomery to score a rushing touchdown. If you look on your traditional books, -140. So you're getting, it's just a good spot. Anywhere else, Matt, if I gave you even money on that, which is exactly what this is, if I gave you even money on it and said, do you want that? Or do you want the -140? You're going to pounce all over the one that has no juice on either side. So I'm going over a half a rushing touchdown for David Montgomery. What do you got?
I 100% agree on that. You mentioned the big thing with the rushing touchdowns here is that it's not the same as a regular sports book where you have to lay a lot of heavy juice on some of these. Mine is going to be Ezekiel Elliott. I'm sticking with what we know here in Elliott. He's actually listed as the same prop as we've seen across the industry at 60.5. You and I have already talked about this a little bit, but it's just too low. And we project him for 73. Game scripts working in his favor, matchups working in his favor against a weaker Las Vegas defense. That's one I like.
I love that a lot. Yeah. Cool. Prizepicks.com, download in the App Store, Google Play Store, or use the promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO, when you sign up for up to $100 deposit bonus. Matt, wide receiver, you got Stefan Diggs as chalk right now, Michael Gallup, but we still have we have CeeDee Lamb projected for very little ownership, which means we're giving him a slight projection because we don't have news right now. But once you said you're pretty certain he's going to be out, once he's out, Gallup's ownership is definitely going to come up. We have Renfro up there as well. And I'm throwing Darnell Mooney into this chalk category because you and I always break down the chalk first and then pivots on this show when we're doing main slates. I'm throwing Mooney into the chalk conversation because in the event we have Allen Robinson projected in. I think I feel pretty confident that he doesn't play. If Allen Robinson's out, I think Darnell Mooney's ownership is going to shoot up. And I've said it all year. I think Andy Dalton, not a mobile quarterback, absolute gunslinger in the sense that he fires with reckless abandon. I think he's good for Mooney. And Mooney saw 16 targets last game, 10 of them with Dalton, who played less than 50% of snaps, and a 2-point conversion attempt, and a 60-yard touchdown at 125 yards and a score. The only other game that anyone outside of Goodwin last week has had 100+ yards this year was Darnell Mooney against this same Lions team, Matt. So yeah, quarterbacks haven't done great against them lately, but look who they've played and it makes sense, especially knowing that teams can run. I really do like Mooney because I don't think Robinson's going to play.
I agree with you. I would be shocked if he plays. He for sure needs a limited practice for today.
Yeah.
And I don't think he gets it. He's been DNP the last 2 days. Doesn't even look close to playing, in my opinion. That locks in Mooney to the wide receiver 1 spot. And I think the offense just changes a little bit under Dalton. Probably looking at a slightly elevated pass rate for him. And I think Mooney is going to project really well. Again, we have Robinson projected in right now, so it's a little bit hard to say. But Mooney, I think, comes in around the Gallup, around the Hunter Renfro area. Gallup versus Mooney is an interesting discussion, but I don't think there's as much of a discussion between Mooney and Renfro. Renfro always projects really well, but he's basically like the definition of a low floor, low ceiling player. Like just looking at the recent games for Renfro, he's only been below 5 targets once this year. It was actually in their most recent game, and he's never been above 9. He's never been below 30 yards receiving. He's never been above 77. If he doesn't score a touchdown, Renfro is basically locked into like an 11-point game based on the role in the offense. And that comes not only from, is he playing the low A dot role in the slot? There's just not a lot of room for big plays there. But he's on an offense that doesn't have a lot of scoring expectation. They're 7-point underdogs. Again, to Dallas, they have the second lowest implied team total on the slate. It's very close to New Orleans. So take that for what it's worth. You could see third in some spots, but overall, not expected to score a ton of points in Las Vegas. So for me, I would rather get to Mooney. I would rather get to Gallup in that similar price range. And it's not really that close for me.
I agree 100%. Renfro is your typical, kind of high, like you said, high floor, low ceiling player. And the thing that I hated last week, do you know how many times Derek Carr targeted his wide receivers last week?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I know Waller had the big game and receivers did not get a ton of work.
Take a guess. They lost by what'd they lose by, 19 or something too?
I'm going to say 14 times.
6.
Okay, 4 of them went to Renfro.
Yeah, and 2 of them went to Zay Jones.
I saw one of the Zay Jones targets. It's deep
maybe
downfield.
It was 2. Maybe it was only 1. But either way, like that's not good. And it was 2 to Zay Jones. That's concerning. So
the offense is imploding.
They're completely imploding. And the defense isn't going to be able to keep up either. They got smoked and still only targeted the wide receivers 6 times. Yeah, they lost 32-13, man. That is, give me Gallup and Mooney on the upside alone. I mean, Gallup is a deep threat. Dalton is going to chuck it to him. There's just no doubt. I don't care if the targets aren't efficient. If he gets double digit against that Detroit secondary, that to me is just a really good spot. I'm all over it. What about Diggs? You know what his longest reception was last week?
No, I don't.
9 yards. At 9 yards, and he had 2 touchdowns. Matt, I'm sure everyone would appreciate this. Because I've talked about it a lot already this week. What's your diagnosis of the Bills offense right now? They had one great game against the Jets, obviously. Okay, fine. Jacksonville, they couldn't find the end zone. Miami, they didn't do anything till late. And then they got smoked by the Indianapolis Colts last week.
Yeah, it's really hard to say. And to be honest with you, I don't have a good answer. Josh Allen still has like fairly solid efficiency metrics. They're clearly not where they were last year, but you look at like his stats, completing 66% of his balls, 7.4 yards per attempt. I mean, he was at 7.9 last year. So some of the big plays aren't there. But ultimately, for me, I think it's just a positive regression point. There's not a ton changing in the offense to suggest that this team should be much, much worse there than it was. Maybe you just have a situation where they overperformed last year, and that could definitely be the case. Maybe it's something that has to do with their defense. I don't know, honestly, but they're not playing as efficient. And I'm not sure what is the case here. With Diggs, I don't see there being a ton of differences in his usage. He doesn't have the elite like target volume he did last year. Last year, he led the NFL in most major receiving categories, and he's certainly not on pace for that. But he is among the top of the league. It just hasn't translated to production yet, which makes me think he's a buy low more than anything else.
I had a 9:30 hockey game yesterday, and I'm driving. Usually I'll throw on a podcast or something, but when I turn the car on, like sports radio pops up. So I'm listening. And there was a guy from PFF on as a guest, pretty sharp guy, but, you know, kind of went into you hear it often like, oh, you know, they're not tough enough, or they're not this kind of just the thing that like average casuals say, which he's not. But he had mentioned that they're just not strong in the trenches. And I thought to myself, maybe you're right. Like the run defense has collapsed against any decent running back they face. Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor just completely imploded. They don't run the football at all. Are they going to have to find some semblance of balance? Cliche was the word I was looking for, by the way, but are they going to have to find some form of balance in the offense, Matt? Because at some point it makes you wonder if just going complete pass heavy and not really getting any foundation of a ground game whatsoever in these tough matchups against good teams could be hurting them. I don't know though.
That is a really interesting thought. And my initial reaction is I don't think they're weak in the trenches. They actually have a really good pass rush. They're top 12 in the NFL in pass rush. And they're kind of built in, I don't know, maybe like the mold of the Kansas City Chiefs defense last year, where they want to rush the passer, they want to play good pass defense, and they'll let you run to a degree. And again, that's gotten them in trouble at times. But as far as their run game, that has been something that's been virtually non-existent for them. And I actually think their offensive line is pretty good. So I think it comes down to like Zach Moss, Devin Singletary, and Matt Breida haven't really been dynamic backs. And one interesting thing to me is when you look at this team and how much they like target each position on the field, they do not target running backs at a high rate whatsoever. So we see a lot of successful teams target the running back position in the pass game. Buffalo is bottom 6 in the NFL in the rate they target their running backs. So yes, you can use your running back dynamically in the run game, like as Derrick Henry and stuff, but you can also use them in dynamic ways in the pass game. We see this a lot with like Aaron Jones or something. So that's a way you can maintain a high pass rate, but you can involve your running back in a way that's not just slamming him into the back of the offensive line. And they just don't do either, which I think is a concern. Like Devin Singletary can catch passes. Zach Moss, he's not as dynamic as Devin Singletary, and he can as well. And maybe this falls on the quarterback. I'm not sure if it's Josh Allen not taking checkdowns that are available to him and pushing the ball downfield, forcing it. I legitimately don't know the answer to this question, but it's plausible.
It is. So Stefan Diggs, Emmanuel Sanders, Cole Beasley. Where do we go with these guys this week? Of course, Stefan Diggs getting a lot of ownership, most popular play on the slate at his position against the Saints night game.
It'd be really hard for me to get away from Diggs. We have so much value. He's the only clear target alpha on his team. I don't really see a way you fade him unless you're just playing the ownership game. You're playing the Millie or something. You take Josh Allen. You're like, I'm going to fade Diggs in hopes that I stack Sanders and Knox or Beasley and Knox or whatever it may be. But in low risk formats and probably in most of my lineups, honestly, I'm going to be playing Diggs. I think he's somebody that is going to come in under owned, even though he comes in as one of the highest owned players on the slate. Behind him, it's interesting because you have Beasley, who sometimes has these games where he just plays 50% of the snaps or whatever. And it's been here and there, and it's been fairly unpredictable. This time it kind of coincides with Dawson Knox coming back, who can flex out into the slot as this big bodied tight end, almost like a Gesicki. He doesn't do it on every play, but he does it enough to pull Beasley off the field. Sanders doesn't come off the field at all. So if I'm picking between the two, it's going to be Sanders for me, even though we have Beasley projected slightly higher. Sanders has the more consistent role in the offense. And then are we talking about Knox now, or should we wait for tight ends later?
Yeah, we'll get there for sure. Let's close out wide receiver first.
Okay, sounds good.
Because I wanted to ask you about a couple of other spots here. Like for me, Gallup, Mooney, and we both agree on this, are two really good spots. Once you get down to some of these lower owned pivots, potential pivots, it's heinous. I mean, there's guys like Khalif Raymond. Jared Goff is expected to start today tomorrow for what it's worth. Like Zay Jones. It's not good. Josh Reynolds was on the field a lot last game, but it's still Josh Reynolds. Like, are there any players down at the bottom, if you're playing this on a 3-game slate, that you're looking at and you're saying, you know what, maybe I do need to get to some Marquise Goodwin or something like that, whose ownership will climb, by the way, if Allen Robinson is in fact ruled out?
For sure. I think the priority in that range is certainly Cedric Wilson. Despite the drops, he should be operating as the wide receiver 2. Maybe if you think his role changes a little bit, you could leverage that with Noah Brown at the Stone Min. He was the wide receiver 3, but it's not inconceivable that he plays ahead of Cedric Wilson after that disastrous performance last week. I think if you're looking for just pure leverage spots, some of the Bears Lions players will give you that. And you don't need to like stack Jared Goff or Andy Dalton necessarily. But if you take a Beasley out of your lineup in favor, and it doesn't need to be Beasley, like you could run a 2v2, but if you take a Beasley 2v2 out of your lineup in favor of a Amon-Ra St. Brown, who actually played a lot, but wasn't involved, or maybe you go the route with a Khalif Raymond, who played a little bit less, but was more involved, and you just use them as a one-off. Depending on the size of your tournament, that could be enough to give you some leverage. And it's not like targets aren't there for these Detroit guys. They very much are. Detroit's throwing the ball a lot. They're often in negative game script. A lot of that does flow through Swift, but in the event that one of these receivers just has like a 10 target, 8 catch game, and maybe he doesn't even score, but like that raw PPR volume alone could be enough to get you there in a tournament on one of these 3-game slates, as long as the contest isn't enormous.
No doubt. And really, say what you want, but Jared Goff actually is an upgrade from Tim Boyle or Doyle. Tim Boyle, right?
Tim Boyle.
Yeah, he is an upgrade because Tim Boyle's he could start 16 games this year. I'm not sure he would throw a touchdown.
He didn't in college.
Exactly. Really bad stuff. Hey, Matt, time to talk tight ends here. And we did get a super chat. Thanks, man, from Nick. Cedric Wilson's still a good option if Lamb is in. That's a great question because, and this is what I would say. He's still fine. His ownership will be, what's it at now?
It's actually in check. It's not that high.
It's not that high.
He's at 19.5%, which on a 3-game slate, again, is not that high.
It's really not that high. He played 63% of snaps. Of course, Lamb only played 54%, but you guys like Noah Brown and Cedric Wilson on a team that has a very high implied total on a 3-game slate. Matt, if I'm looking at tertiary receivers, even if Lamb were to play, which we don't think he will, I don't mind going to the wide receiver 3 from a team that could score 40 points.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And that's why we're kind of interested in Noah Brown. If CeeDee Lamb is out, he would be the wide receiver 3, presumably on an offense that's explosive. So Cedric Wilson operating in that wide receiver 3 role, the projection would come down, but you would expect ownership to come down with it. And we see a lot of these short slates have the receivers that pop up, and maybe all he has to do is score a touchdown, and that's enough to get you there at his price. I remember 2 years ago, I think a playoff slate where I believe DeAndre Hopkins was honestly still on the Texans, but Kiki Cutie had 2 touchdowns as the wide receiver 3 at single digit ownership on a 2-game slate maybe, and just broke the slate. Those things happen. So if CeeDee Lamb is in, I still think whoever is on the field in that wide receiver 3 role for Dallas is in play. in this situation, it's Cedric Wilson. So yes, I think he is still a good option for GPPs.
I'm with you. Hey, Darren Waller and Dalton Schultz are the two guys getting a lot of love right now. Dawson Knox a little bit as well. He had a lot of volume last game too, with them playing from behind. And then you're looking down at like TJ Hawkinson, Cole Kmet. Juwan Johnson, I don't think is crazy.
No Adam Troutman.
What's up?
No Adam Troutman. He's on injured reserve.
We don't have Nick Vanette projected for anything, but he ran 15 routes on 18 snaps. That's a lot. Which
is shocking to me because in his career, he's historically a blocker. Seeing him run that many routes was shocking.
I know. I was shocked as well. That's a lot. And Juwan Johnson was a coach's decision inactive. I still think he plays, but maybe it's minimum salary Vanette. I don't know. What are you doing at the tight end position, Matt?
Okay. I think the plays they're pretty clear. So Waller's going to be your number one. He just has the volume that's basically like a wide receiver used downfield. Schultz, I think, is the tight end too. And it's partially because Blake Jarwin's on injured reserve. So the job is entirely Schultz at this point. But then down their top two receivers, all those targets aren't one for one just going to be switched over to Gallup and switched over to Cedric Wilson. You would expect a slight increase for Dalton Schultz too in his role. And from there, number 3, Dawson Knox. He's been extremely involved as well. In a high-powered Buffalo offense, big favorites in this game, I think. And again, he's playing like 98% of the snaps. Like he's not coming off the field at all. It's Beasley coming off the field instead of Knox in some of those game situations. All three are great plays. From there, I think you have some pretty good GPP options in Kmet. The big goose egg last week certainly is going to scare people away. But he'd actually been playing really well prior to that. And TJ Hawkinson just in a high volume role, but really low scoring expectation. One thought I had at the tight end position that I want to get your thoughts on is running 2 of them, because it's actually a pretty strong tight end slate for only having 3 games, 6 teams. Like the fact that we get Waller, Schultz, Knox, Hawkinson, and Kmet, all tight ends that are pretty involved in their offense. I think you could use tight ends on this slate, 2 of them, that is 1 in your flex, get rid of a lot of ownership. And I don't think you're sacrificing that much in projection. For example, if you run like Waller, Schultz, how different is that than running Waller, Cedric Wilson, other than the price? Or you could even throw Gallup in there if you'd like, but I don't think the difference is that great.
Absolutely. I don't want to do like a Waller Vanette or Waller Juwan Johnson. But
agreed.
Ben, what's that?
I agree with that.
Yeah, but Ben and I talked about this yesterday too, Matt, on the first look. To go, Waller and Knox makes a lot of sense. Because you're right. When it comes to these cheap options at wide receiver, you can make an argument that even the touchdown equity is a lot higher for most of these tight ends. And the projected target share is not much lower either. Like if Dawson Knox is the same price as, say, I don't know, Traquan Smith against that Buffalo secondary, or Amon-Ra St. Brown or Brian Edwards, give me Dawson Knox all day. I'm with you. Yeah.
I even think you could use Knox as like a 1-for-1 for like a Beasley or a Sanders. And again, he's going to project less, but you playing the double tight end with Knox to get some leverage via ownership. And that would also give you leverage off a higher owned Sanders and a higher owned Beasley in particular projects for decent ownership for us right now. So I think using Knox over Beasley in a 2 tight end lineup could give you some extra leverage.
I love it. I also love seeing everybody win with the Awesemo avatar and then shouting us out. Well, not shouting us out, tweeting us at Awesemo HOF, because you get, all of the love over on Twitter, the likes, the comments, the praise, and then you get a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum, which is $90 value, every single thing on the site, all the tools built by the #1 ranked player in the world, which, by the way, if you use the promo code STUFFING right now, STUFFING. Sorry, Mike, I'm going to make you flip back to that for a second. You'll get 1 free week of Awesemo Express NFL for a single $1. It includes a lot of main slate stuff, the rankings, the lineup builder light, but also all of our showdown tools, ownership, player projections, the top plays tool, which is huge. All of that for showdowns, which means you'll have all 3 showdowns on the Thursday slate, which are all huge, Sunday and Monday night football within that week. It's good stuff. Hell, if you wait and do it tomorrow morning, just a little a little tip here. You'll also get Thursday night football next week. So that'll give you 1, 2, 3, 4. That'll give you 6 showdown slates for a single dollar, not including all the main slate content. So check that out. And let me shout it out. By the way, go to awesemo.com/avatar, download the avatar, whether it's FanDuel, DraftKings, Yahoo, doesn't matter. If you finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, tweet us at Awesemo HOF. Include Matt too at Matt_Gajeski, myself at Lafayette_D. And well, you'll get the free month. You'll get the shout out right here, and you'll forever be enshrined in the Awesemo Hall of Fame. So here we go. Vetro, $2,100. Boom. Congratulations to you. The showdown 400K play action just the other day. Trust the process. Shout out to Lavi, Ship My Money, and his bad haircuts for the great content. Congrats, dude. 3rd place. That'll get you a free month. Mini max, man. Those are hard to win. LV, no better DFS sport than NBA. Another good night for the Awesemo team. Love it. Congrats to you. And then you got a couple more here. Peter Hanley always winning. 10,200 there on the same night. I think 34,000. Just the guy is just absolutely crushing it on back-to-back days. Congrats, man. That is huge. Keeping it up. He will be, Matt, he will forever. He'll be on the wall. He'll be in the Ring of Honor or whatever we call it. If we ever make something for all-time heaters at Awesemo, Peter Hanley's got to be on it.
The heater he's been on is unbelievable.
It's insane. It makes no sense. Him and Jordan Burke are just wild. And Dave DeRemmer, this guy wins a lot too. Dropped the 3rd late in the last game, but I'll take it. Over $1,000 profit on the day. Always reworking my process. The more I learn from the Awesemo crew. Congrats to you as well, man. Go and grab the avatar. Tweet us at Awesemo HOF. All right, Matt. Top stacks. Who do you have right now? There aren't a lot of them, but Buffalo getting 40.7% top stack probability. They've stunk lately, so it might just be like, hey, Josh Allen is far and away the best quarterback on this slate.
I think that's the case. And I think this is pretty much expected. Like Buffalo, sometimes they have a positive leverage score, even with Josh Allen drawing ownership. So I don't want to spend too much time on it. But one thing that actually really surprised me in the leverage tool here in our top stacks tool is Vegas coming in a lot higher than Dallas. I think a lot of people are going to click the safety with Dak Prescott. And they probably do realize that Dallas is playing down 2 pass catchers, likely don't think it matters. And I think that's probably true to some degree. But there is a world too where Dallas just embraces the run, uses Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard to get there. And then you still have Vegas playing from negative game script. And you and I touched on this before. Derek Carr has not been playing well. They have not been targeting the receivers a bunch, but it still comes down to they should be playing from behind and throwing the ball a lot in this game. Derek Carr is pretty easy to stack and he's pretty cheap to stack. I'm not sure what the upside is, but the tools we have here make it a little interesting to me. So Vegas with a positive leverage score, bit of a surprise. But now I'm going to take a longer look at this, and I think I'm probably going to end up with a little more Derek Carr in the field.
Yeah, I think you might have to at this point. And sorry, Jordan Lockhart. I said Jordan Burkhart. Thank you. $50 super chat just for me to correct his name. I mean, what an asshole I am. Appreciate the show, guys. As always, thanks, man. Appreciate you. By the way, three likes away from 100. So we'll get there. We'll get there. Thank you in advance. I'll go with one, Matt, before we close this out. Chicago. It sounds crazy, but it's a 3-game slate. Dalton was great in half of the game that he played, only 49% of the snaps. He's going to make mistakes. I don't care. I'll play the Detroit defense against him for all I care. Mooney, Goodwin, if you wanted to, you could go with that stack and then you can get Diggs. You can get Ezekiel Elliott. You can get Swift. You can get as many players as you want, Waller into those lineups. I'm not, and you know, the run back would be Swift. Jared Goff loves to throw to him. I'm not opposed to having, if he is that low owned on a 3-game slate, some Andy Dalton stacks against, you know, one of the worst secondaries in the league. Sound crazy? Maybe, but I'll probably have some of it.
People have short memories, man. I remember vividly the Thanksgiving slate where David Blau threw 3 scores to Marvin Jones.
That's right.
Something
I know you do.
I remember it vividly because how bad I got smoked based on it. But yeah, crazy things happen on 3-game slates. Crazy things happen in individual games, and there's only 3 of them here. So I think taking some leverage with the Chicago Bears-Lions game, albeit unlikely, could be a spot where that does get you to a tournament winning score.
Matt, what else you got going on today and throughout the week?
Man, I am busy as can be with college football. It's rivalry week, so they split the main slate between Friday and Saturday. It is like having 2 full college football main slates. And then there's college basketball every single day. So check out the projections. We have packages for both, full projections for both, articles for both, everything you could possibly need if you were a college sports fan.
Appreciate you guys as always. Big NBA slate today. Big. Got live before a lock at 6. You got deeper dive at 4:45. Tomorrow, 3.5 hour live stream, baby, all the way up to kickoff Thanksgiving. If you're not going to be around tomorrow, well, have a happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the day, win some money, get drunk, eat some good food, and Matt and I will catch you back here next week on the NFL Strategy Show presented by Prize Picks. Peace.